Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, so here we are with Chris and Michael, and I'm excited for this because it's the first time we have just two men, two husbands and fathers on this our podcast, and so this is going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I feel outnumbered.
Well, so you're meant to be the fly on the wall, honey, so you can hear what guys talk about. Because
my gosh,
Kaylee always asks about, like, when I get back from golfing with the guys or something, like, what did you guys talk about?
Oh yeah, I'll ask him. Okay, honey. So like, if he's golfing with Chris, I'll say, "How's Chris and Alicia and all the kids doing since you've been with them for 8 hours?" And you will say, I don't know.
I don't know.
And I'll be like, "What do you mean you don't know?"
Well, I mean, they say fine.
Yeah,
Because
you do not ask them.
Yeah, but you should have seen his 3-putt on hole number 6. It was embarrassing.
Exactly.
Because you do not ask them, or you don't talk about that stuff. Where when I'm with my girlfriends, I could tell you everything that's going on. So anyways.
We talk about the important things, like, beer.
Giving each other a hard time.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, we're going off topic, honey, as usual. But Chris and Michael, really, welcome to the show. That was a long intro.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us. And you said that's the first time you had two husbands on. Just to clarify, we're not married to each other. I'm married to my lovely wife, Lydia. And Chris, of course, is married to Alicia. Just wanted to clarify that.
We're already starting out, honey.
Okay, yeah. I guess that didn't sound weird. That's why Michael had this weird look on his face.
I know.
And this cringe. And in the words of Seinfeld, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Thank you for clarifying, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me on. I think Alicia and I were one of your first guests. So I'm married to Alicia of 22 years, starting next week. I think we've got our anniversary.
All right,
Congratulations.
Michael is but Michael and I have joined forces with this Forge group. We'll talk more about that, but that's why we're here. We are excited. So thanks for having us on.
Yeah. So when you do look at the headshot on the episode, they're together but not together, right? They're just besties. So yeah, Chris, definitely go ahead and listen to episode 2 when Chris and Alicia were on the show, and they just really kicked us off. They were our first guests on our podcast, and we just we stay connected. So it's been great to kind of follow them on social and see what's going on, and we connect every now and then. So it's great to see what you're doing in business and family, and then now starting this men's mastermind we'll get into. But the first question I have, let's just start out down and dirty here. What is one of the dumbest things you have done in your marriage?
I can't wait to hear this.
Who wants to go first?
I love this topic.
That's right. Where's the unrecord button here? Let's see here. Boy, I had a couple come to mind when you said that, but I think one is, when we were talking about this earlier, 3 kids versus 4. I'm lucky that we have a 4th kid because I barely made it to the birth of my third child.
Oh.
So one thing that I did down my marriage is we had a business at the time, employees, and about 3 weeks before her due date, we had this big conference that was important, and I was like, I should probably go to this. Like, all our employees are flying out to Minneapolis to go to this conference, and so she's like, yeah, it shouldn't be that bad. I mean, you can go, but just like stand by, right? And so we had some plan B, people from church and friends kind of waiting in the wings if things were going to go. So we have the conference. I'm flying back home. I had a layover in Salt Lake City, and I call because it was about bedtime, and I was like, tell the kids goodnight, and she answers the phone. She's like, oh my gosh, I think my water just broke. And I'm like, no, kind of go into scramble mode, right? I'm like, okay, I'll hang up. I'm going to be there. And end up calling friends and sorting it out. I land. Oh, actually, let's break that back. I get on the plane and I peek my head in the cockpit. I'm like, sir, I don't know if there are any shortcuts in the air, but we got to go. I got a baby on the way.
Is this pre 9/11?
So this is September 2012 for
Oh wow! I'm surprised they let you in the cockpit.
Oh man, well, I just when you're bored, you peek your head in, and
okay,
so they were gracious.
Okay,
they were like, "Hey, let's get boarded as quick as possible." Like, we were out the gate early. Everyone stayed in their seats. Like, let me off first.
Really?
Friends picked me up at the airport. Picks me up. I go straight to the hospital, and about an hour and a half later, Lucia's born. But I remember my wife's eyes like, I can't believe that this happened. And it was a little tense there. So, that was definitely one of those things that if I could go back, I would not have gone to that conference and created some unneeded chaos there.
You didn't have a friend who's a cop that can just give you a police escort.
All the way to the hospital. Wow.
It was about midnight. So, yeah, we definitely blew through some stoplights.
All right, that's pretty good, Chris. What about you, Michael?
Oh, man. Well, I was looking back into my volumes of mistakes that I made in my marriage, and one comes to mind. I thought it was a good idea. So when I first got married, I had a construction.
Of course it was.
Every bad idea starts as a good idea in your head, right?
Uh-huh.
I thought it was a good idea to quit my business. I had a pretty solid construction business doing residential remodeling, and I was really interested in coaching at the time and wanted to become a coach for a long time. And I had this passion rising up in me. I was super excited about it. So I decided to quit my business and start a coaching business right when I first got married. And shortly after we got married, we had a baby on the way. And so I hang up the golden goose of our family and decide I'm going to start this very difficult business and get enough coaching clients to support my family. And for the first couple months, it went well. But that 6th and 7th month when you're just starting out as a coach is pretty tough, and you don't know all those cycles, and I wasn't planning enough for the future. All that kind of dried up, and we had no income coming in. We had a baby on the way, and my wife is like, what in the world did I do? I married a bum. And so then I'm out there in the streets knocking on doors, like trying to scrape up construction work. Half of my tools I had gotten rid of already. It was just I didn't have a lot of wisdom at that point, and I thought, of course, everything's going to fall in place. It's going to be great. And it certainly didn't, but learned a lot through that process.
Yeah.
And you're still married?
Yep.
Still married. Yep.
That shows he was testing her commitment to love.
Is that what you call it?
Something like that. Yeah.
Indirectly. Not intentionally,
man,
but that's
did
what
I ever test it.
That's good stuff. We have a friend, he missed Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Because he decided to go for a bike ride. Up a mountain.
Well, we'll do that on another episode because...
And even though he realized he was running late, they still didn't turn back.
Yeah, it's a whole funny story. And it's only funny because it didn't happen to me. Otherwise, I think I would have killed him. But anyways.
So that's pretty good. Well, that's all right. So the reason why I asked this question is because, as men, husbands, we're not perfect. And even though we coach husbands.
What?
and fathers
What?
in this. We all got some stuff, right? And we're not perfect, but we know how to recover, and we learn from our mistakes, right? And so, we're going to get into really how to, be a better husband, father, and business leader. And anything around that is going to be fair game. So as we start asking questions, who knows where this is going to go, but tell us a little bit first, your background, your growing up, like where you grow up with a hard work ethic. What was the family life like, the family commitment? Is what you're doing now modeled from how you grew up, or if not, what changed? We'll go in reverse order now. How about Michael?
Sure. Yeah, I was blessed to have just a great family. Grew up in a Christian home, a very supportive home where family was the most important. I think some of the challenges with how I was raised was there wasn't a lot of sort of wide open thinking about what's possible with your career or the difference you could make in the world. It was sort of buckled down and see it through for the next couple decades, and then you'll have your reward at the end, which is pretty common with that generation. But work ethic was super important, as well as self-control and to not complain. And so I really feel grateful for that. So whenever something comes my way, my wife it actually annoys my wife sometimes because she thinks that I don't share any of my feelings, but really I think it's honorable because I'm not complaining and I'm not like kind of being flattened by the things that happen to me. So I have kind of this silent sufferer sort of approach to life that I value in a lot of ways, but it's not always good because sometimes it causes me to hold some of my feelings that need to be expressed back instead of sharing them with my wife, helping other people around me see them and understand them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have some of those conversations at home too, huh?
Yes, we do.
Mom,
Mom, what's going on in there, honey?
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. He's in the nothing boxes
Good.
all the time.
So how about you, Chris?
Yeah, pretty similar. I was fortunate to also grow up in a Christian home. Both my parents were, the first Christians in their family. So for them, navigating what does faith look like, what does parenting from a Christian perspective look like, and blessed that my dad was just a great example of a hard worker. Very dedicated to that. Learned a lot just about that hard work ethic growing up from watching him work long and late hours sometimes as a teacher, and then do some odd jobs too. And then he actually built our house that we grew up in. So for 2 years, just kind of watching, and then of course being the grunt laborer next to him, doing stuff alongside at like 11, 12 years old. Learned a lot about that, and really I think brought that into into my career. And similarly, I think that talking about feelings or talking about just some deeper ideas, deeper connection, didn't really have that example necessarily. And so that's been something that, I'm sure you talk about this on your podcast. I've heard some of those episodes, but talking a little more deeply about each other's feelings and emotions and what you're going through, that's been a learning curve, right, in marriage for sure, and opening up and being vulnerable and being authentic to your ideas, your hopes, your dreams, your frustrations, your challenges, all of that. So I think that's something that we're still, of course, navigating. That's something you do until the day you die, probably, in marriage, but also inviting men to talk about those things too, and to, in a safe environment, how do you discuss just the complexities of leading yourself well, of being a husband, being an intentional father? Like, how can you do that in an environment where you want to grow and you also want to learn from each other about some of those things that happen along that journey? So that's something that I think Michael and I have both identified early on, and we can get to like maybe how we met and our friendship. But I think as we met and grew our friendship, we had a lot of these similar backgrounds and ideas of, and why we connected so strongly because it's some of that shared experience.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit about that, because, and I'm sure Kaylee would love for me to talk about this, about feelings, because it sounds like we both grew up in similar households. My dad didn't talk about emotions and feelings and stuff like that. Very, kind of old school Japanese. You just grind it out. And you just go do. And even when things are going bad, you don't talk about it, right? And so, how have you started to be able to open up more freely with your wife? Because that's for me too. It's the same thing. And so, honey, what do you feel? How are you feeling? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, I know, because you can't put a name to it because it was never talked about before. At least growing up. And so, how have you navigated that and start to open up a little more, be able to share your feelings? Because especially generations talking about feelings is a sign of weakness, right? So, how have you guys been able to kind of start to get over the hump a little bit?
Yeah, that there's a lot of good insight in just how you laid that question out. But I think what you said about do, like that's kind of what we do it naturally as men who are raised this way, right? As we jump into action, whether that's to fix, whether that's just to move something forward. So I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that if you create space to reflect, to actually listen to your thoughts, to write down your thoughts, to be present in the moment, you're going to start to become more aware of what you're feeling. And that's one side of it for ourselves, but also how do we do that and be present with our wives too? So also creating space where we can both sort of talk about our feelings. And as a guy, this part's really tough, but as our wives are expressing their feelings, to sit there and to listen and to be present with them and to ask more questions about that and to dig deeper on those things rather than going into the do mode. And it really takes like a rewiring of your brain to see the value in that for her, because for me, I don't feel that. I don't feel the value of doing that for myself. Like I need to learn more about that. But for our wives, that could be everything, right? To be heard, to be listened to have more questions asked about that, to be present with them and their emotions. Just recently, a guy from one of our groups was talking about how he really struggled to do that because it feels like you're taking shots or you're not doing your job as a man when you're sitting there listening to these challenges that your wife is facing, but you can't do anything about it. But listen, it feels like you're not doing your job, but actually that is your job, is to be present with her. So this guy was talking about a victory that he had in just sitting there and listening rather than letting all that emotion get to him and running out the door or trying to impose his solutions on the situation. Just being there and honoring enough to say, this hurts what you're saying to me, but I'm still going to sit there and listen to show you that I'm with you and that I'm not going anywhere. No matter what you say or how crazy your thoughts come across to me, I am with you and I'm going to listen and be present with you in this moment. That's tough.
That's good.
Oh, I love that, Michael, because I have kind of a similar background as you, all you guys. In my family, we didn't talk about feelings. You just buck it up. You just stop crying. We don't feel. And so I kind of had to learn to do that. And by doing that, I mean like building a safe place where Robert and I, where I feel like I can share what I'm feeling. And what you're talking, Michael, he's not going to walk out on me. He's not going to think I'm crazy. He's not going to laugh at me. He's not going to tell me all these different things that I'm afraid of, to share my emotions, to be able to cultivate it with me. And that's really helped me process through a lot of things, because if you haven't had that as a child, it's challenging. Like you're saying, honey, you don't know what you're feeling or how to express it.
Yeah, I remember the first time, I listened and empathized, similar to the guy in your group, that first breakthrough, right? Where I listened, I empathized, and she was like, oh, thanks, honey, and then that was it. Instead of me trying to fix it and it becomes an argument. I was like, well, that was easy.
Were you disappointed?
Kind of.
One time
you didn't give me a chance to fix you.
I had 5 points laid out with bullet points and detail.
Because we always tell our clients, our couples, like, if you're not sure what your spouse needs, just ask them. And so he asked me, honey, what do you need? And I said, I just need a hug. And he's like,
oh, that time, yeah.
A hug? Just a hug? He gave me a hug, and then I was off running again. He's like, really? That's it?
I remember standing there. She walked away, and I remember standing there and going, that's it? That's
Can't be that
that's all
simple.
it took.
I don't get to fix anything.
Oh, that's good. But that's good, Michael.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that because that's been my experience too. But I think it's just understanding also like your spouse's love language. We've been talking about that in our groups, and for mine it's that quality time. And sometimes what quality time looks like is just sitting there on the couch and asking questions and then shutting up and listening and just let her talk. I mean, like you mentioned earlier about the, hey, how was your day, or how was your time at the golf? Like for guys, that could be a couple sentences and we're done. But for you, that could be another half an hour and a drink or two in, like you're still going, and that's fine because we're wired so differently. But to your point, I mean, we'll finish those kind of conversations, and it's just this like, oh, that was really good to get off my chest. Thanks for listening. And, a hug, and it's like, all right, now we're done. Now we can kind of go back to whatever. So for me, it's just been taking that example, and I've learned from Michael about that too. But, I joke that I am a better human doing than a human being. I'm trying to be a better human being. I'm just being present, being there to listen and not fix, not come in with all these solutions to solve her problem. At the end of the day, she just wants to know that she's loved, she's cared for, she's listened to and heard, and I'm there.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
good.
much.
As soon as you said, just sit on the couch, it reminded me of that YouTube video, The Nail in Your Head. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
It's not about the nail.
It's not about the nail, right?
I got this tension. I just achy tension.
A headache.
So tell us about now moving to building your business or having your business, and then marriage, then having kids. Entrepreneurs, as you know, because that's the work you do and what we do too, is that tension. Entrepreneurs have that tension between, hey, I gotta focus on my business, but there are needs at home. But how do you do both well? So as you were just growing in your marriage and your business, how were you able to balance that out, sort that out? It's like, how much time do I spend here versus over here? And, how did you navigate all that, marriage and business?
Are you suggesting that we have it sorted out?
I gotta have at least a tip.
No, I think honestly, there's a complete flipping upside down mentally that has to happen first. So the traditional way that this is laid out is, okay, the father goes out, figures out his career, he gets that locked in, gets the money flowing in, and then when he has that figured out, he can go back toward his house and start to get that in order. I think if you're looking at it that way, you're already in trouble, right? This thing has to be flipped out upside down completely. I know Chris and I share this vision for actually building our business around the life that we want, not vice versa. So starting with, how do we want our family life to look like? How do we want our marriage to look like? How much time are we investing in that? What does an ideal a week look like? And then once we get that vision clear, then we can start building our business to serve that around it. It's not first, it's actually last. And we'll get into talking a bit more about this, but the marriage actually has to come first before the kids, and the kids come before the work as well. And I'd even venture to say that, and we have this written out as part of our creed, if we're not taking care of ourselves as men, we're not going to have anything to give to any of those areas. If we're coming from a place of lack, of exhausted, burned out, and that's where so many men live. They say, I'm already half burned out trying to make this tension work between, my job and putting time into the family. And now you want me to take care of myself too? It's just not going to happen. Like that's last. We're saying, no, you got to flip this thing upside down completely. If you're not filling your own cup first, if you're not healthy and strong and rested and taking care of your mind and your body and your spirit, what are you going to have to give to these other important areas of your life? So that's why we start with that self-leadership piece.
Yeah, that's good, Michael. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, to get a little granular and personal, so my first career was actually in politics of all things. I came out of college, jumped into the political realm, and that was like a crazy season of life, fast paced. I was early 20s, young married, got married at 21. And so we were just navigating the newness of marriage and that relationship. And now this super stressful, busy career. And, 5 years into that, had a real kind of raw come to Jesus moment. I think I shared this on that podcast number 2. But just stopped in our tracks and said, whoa, this is going to go off course quick if we don't have a course correction. And had a very literal moment one evening that says, I've got to leave this world and we've got to figure something out. And that was a journey in 2006 for us to say, okay, well, what's that going to look like? And we had a very, very literal kitchen table meeting where we said, okay, let's ask ourselves some questions. Like, what do we want? Like Michael's talking about, what do we want our life to look like? Right now, we are ships passing in the night. She went back to school in the evenings. I'm up before she is awake. I mean, it was a rough season of life. And so how do we now approach our marriage being the center and a business to serve that? And as we talked about around that time, how do we start a family around this? So we just asked, like, what are we interested in? What are we kind of good at? What do we study? And that's where we first came up with our idea that we started together, which was an online travel business. That was our first career, first business together. And so, that was going well. Now I'm going to fast forward a lot here because that was about a 14-year process. I stepped away from that in a full-time capacity because we had grown quite a bit of employees to run that, people working for us across the country, and I was able to get into doing some coaching, got certified as a business coach, and started that journey. Well, then, boom, 2020 hits, COVID. What's one industry you probably don't want to be in is travel.
Yeah.
Where 200 countries around the world and governments are saying, you can't travel anymore.
Yeah.
And so at that point, about 2/3 of our income was still tied to that business. And boy, there were some tough weeks, tough months there, but thank God for my wife as a support and as a prayer warrior too, to just lean into some of those difficult conversations of, gosh, honey, I'm not doing very well today. And this is super stressful. I had to let all my employees go.
Wow.
Had a 6-figure loss, had to essentially start over, and really leaned into, okay, now we're in kind of a new pivot. What do we want life 2.0 or maybe 3.0 at that point to look like for our family? And that was some precious times together to lean into some of those conversations. I mean, Michael knows this. I'm a pretty emotional guy, so there were some tears going on in some of those conversations and meetings. But just really coming together to say, well, what are we going to do in this new season of life? And that's kind of what's led me to, in the last 3 years, I've done a lot more in real estate investing, which I was doing a little bit, but on the side during the times of having the other business, and then coaching as well. And that's really kind of led us now to kind of where Michael and I have joined forces in this past year to say we've got some of our things going on and business income and expenses mostly taken care of with what we're doing over here, because he's also been doing some real estate. But boy, our passion is really helping men come alive and being all in with their families, kind of having this paradigm shift of what it can look like to be an engaged and intentional husband and father first and foremost, and then excel in your business. And that's really what's helped each of us align and come together in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. During 2020, I knew you had your travel business and what that meant to your business. I forgot about all that. Wow, that must have been definitely some trying times, right? As soon as the directive comes out, we're closing down, there's no travel. It's like, oh crap. What do I do? Because that's totally out of your control, right? There's only so much you can. I mean, literally nobody can travel. You're supposed to be for 2 weeks, right? We're supposed to be just at home. So, and all the things that got shifted.
Well, I could hear like that was so challenging during that time, but I'm so glad you invested so much into your family so that you were able to get through and over that hump, because sometimes people don't make it through those kinds of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we just shared this on another podcast Michael and I were on, but this is just a testament to my friendship with Michael too. I remember a few moments during that time. This is pretty much March to May of 2020. Probably those 3 months were probably some of the toughest of my life.
Wow.
And we were, we were in communication along with a couple other guys and just kind of checking in with each other because everyone was affected in multiple ways. But they knew, like, yeah, this guy's got a travel business. Like his business is done.
Yeah.
And I remember having some conversations where we're like, listen, guys, no question is off the table. Like, check in, ask how we're doing. And I remember one time just, being pretty emotional. It was kind of a raw morning. And I was like, guys, like, please check in with me because there are some times where I'm just not feeling right. And if we're frank with each other, this is the time of life, or this is the period that feels like, in the Great Depression, guys are throwing themselves in front of a train, or in the financial crisis, they're jumping out of buildings. Like I'm not going to go there. I'm not that twisted right now, but like I'm having some moments here, and so make sure you ask me some of those questions. And man, there were just some times that I'm really grateful for Michael and his friendship during that time of just checking in, encouraging words, prayer, and helping me get through some of those moments.
Wow, that's great. I mean, that's powerful. And I think that speaks to, marriage, family is important, but having that external group of guys or people around you, even outside of family, because there's some things guys can say to each other that a wife can't, and vice versa. And there's some things you're willing to share with the guys that sometimes you're not willing to share with your wife. But collectively, I think, having those relationships around you, that full supportive relationships, and obviously that's why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's great. Go ahead, Michael.
I just want to say one more thing about that. So it's one thing to have people around you, but one thing that just kind of got glossed over is Chris reached out and said, guys, like, make sure you're taking a look at my life and what's going on, because I need your help. That step seems small, but so many guys don't do that, can't do that. I struggle with that, like to actually make the call, to actually put yourself out there and say, I need help. That is one of the biggest challenges for a man.
Well, yeah, because we're grown up to just do, as we said earlier, right? You just go do it. Pick yourself up and just go do it. And we don't talk about our problems and burden other people with your problems, right?
Yeah.
Ask for help. It's like, oh my gosh, we don't want to be vulnerable. We want everybody to think we're strong and we can do it on our own. And yeah, I think that's great too, that you were able to reach out and tell people what you were needing and where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
there's
now
a
I know
lie
to
that's been told that if you do that you're weak and that you're not a real man, right? Yeah. In fact, the opposite is true. It takes a real man to reach out and ask for help and know that you weren't meant to do it on your own. Yeah. So I respect that a lot about you, Chris, that you do that, because it takes humility to put yourself out there in that way. And this whole lone wolf thing that's pervasive in our society is not helpful at all. In fact, that's destructive to think that way.
Yeah, that's good. And now I know who to call when I'm having a moment. Call him Michael.
Yeah. We'll give out his phone number at the end of the call or the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I've done that before.
He's good at it. I'm just thinking too, just to follow that line of thought, and thank you. We just had a call with one of the guys in our masterminds this week about this same kind of thing. He was frankly about ready to throw in the towel on some stuff, and it was that point of reaching out, and then we jumped on a phone call, gathered around him, and it's easy for guys to just kind of pull back, isolate, and try to sort some stuff out, and then you go down that hole, and you typically are going to further distance and isolate from people. Yeah. But the power of community, the power of masterminding, and having authentic relationships, we were able to lean into a great conversation, and he had some breakthrough moments, and now he's like, man, all right, I know what I need to do. And he's doing it, right? And he's re-engaged now to move forward in some really positive ways that's going to affect not just his business, but his marriage relationship and his family. So those are really important conversations to have as men.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope that you're instilling this in young and children as well, because with the suicide rate as high as it is, and I think with the pandemic, people felt even more alone than ever. And so sometimes you just don't think about, I mean, I probably wouldn't have thought about, oh, I need to like reach out to my girlfriends and just let them know where I'm at. So, because people want to be there for you, I believe we just don't know what's going on in your life.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's, as we kind of close up here, on your website, in the mastermind, you talk about men will change the world by investing in 4 areas of your lives. And I know, Michael, you kind of touched upon that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more in the few minutes we have left, a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've come up with a creed for the Forge that helps outline these 4 areas. And I don't know, maybe it makes sense to just read through that. That might be the most concise way to kind of express this. But just in examining our own journeys and the journeys of countless men that we have coached and been around, like, this is kind of what we've identified as the path to living a healthy life as a married man with kids. And so number 1 is self-leadership. And this is really an agreement that each guy is making by being a part of the Forge. Is they would say these words: I lead myself with purpose. I am healthy and strong physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Number 2 is around marriage. My wife is the most important person in my life, and my actions reflect this. I consistently lay down my life for her. I will date her, be emotionally present, and listen intently. I will love, honor, and protect her for the rest of my days. Number 3, our role as father. I am intentional about shaping the character of my children, teaching and leading them to become exceptional adults. They know they are loved, and we regularly make memories together. And then that 4th category of vocation or work. And I do my work with excellence, integrity, and honor. I use my gifts and talents to make an impact, serve others, and create financial abundance. This provides us the opportunity to live out an extraordinary vision for our family.
Oh, very good. That's powerful.
Yes, very
Well done.
powerful.
So how did you guys come up with that creed? You guys sitting around brainstorming, or how did that come out?
It was literal brainstorming and wordsmithing together. As we came together to start this group called The Forge earlier this year, Michael and I have had a couple weekends together where we just dove deep into our long-term vision for The Forge and then kind of the mission, the tactical. So even just a few weeks ago of finalizing this creed that says we want any guy that is going to resonate with this kind of lifestyle to adopt this creed. And these 4 areas are critical. As you mentioned earlier, it starts with, and if you think of these like concentric rings, at the center is that self-leadership. We think that's so key, is to just have body, mind, soul, spirit has to be healthy there. Then you go into the marriage piece, the fatherhood, and then the business. Yeah. So it was really just masterminding together around, well, let's put some language together to make this powerful for men.
Yeah. So tell us a little about Forge. What's Forge all about? I remember when we posted it on Facebook a few months ago, I was like, all right, that looks cool.
Yeah, so that's that community piece, right? So many men are isolated, and we do it to ourselves. It's a pride thing often. Sometimes it's just the complexity of life. We just don't have time to invest in friendships. And so we wanted to create a community where stepping up as a man in all these areas of life was the norm, and that we were going to encourage each other in that. Society doesn't have a lot of hope for us. They're kind of like, goodness gracious, man, he's like got his stained shirt sitting on his lazy boy chair watching TV, drinking beer, right? And we're saying, no, that is not us. And we're about to create a movement where the real men are going to step up and encourage each other to not apologize for being intentional, strong men in this world. And so that's what the Forge is all about.
Oh my gosh, I love it. We need more men like that, because in this society, it's like we almost don't want men anymore. You know, we can do it all on our own. We don't need them. And I'm like, no, they are like the foundation of our families. And
Yeah, absolutely.
they're what holds everything together and builds up our children. And we see the crime rate is as high as it is, and most of them are fatherless. It's so sad. So I love what you guys are doing, and I love that you are speaking into other men and raising them up to be leaders. And I think it's wonderful.
All right, well said, honey. I can't add to that. So, Chris and Michael, it was an honor to have you on, and of course, anytime, anything we can do to support you guys, I mean, we're here. So, we're of like minds, like hearts. So, amen. We're just doing everything we can to support you. So,
well, thank you, and thank you guys for all that you do to lead couples well in business. And it's not an easy task, right? To come alongside people that are married first and foremost, and working together. But you guys are doing that well and serving clients well. So we're just happy to be on your show to talk about these things that truly matter.
Grateful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, you guys.
We had a really great time. Very
Yes.
insightful. I took notes, of course, and so I might even practice those with you, honey.
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be great.
So for those of you still listening, or for those of you listening, and you're still listening, so that means this has been an impactful conversation. So please share this and leave a review. And we'd love to help other husbands and fathers just be better at what they do in life and in business. And so God bless you, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and to remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.